I yield 3 minutes to my colleague and friend from Indiana, Mr. Burton.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. For many years, Washington, D.C. has had the distinction of being the murder capital of America. It's very high as far as crime is concerned, right up at the top. I want to tell you a couple of stories, and I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle listen to this. I had a gal that worked for me, a young lady that worked for me as my secretary years ago. She lived about 4 blocks from the Capitol, and one night she had her window open this much on the second floor, and a guy shinnied up the drain pipe came in with a 4-inch knife and stabbed her 4 times. And the only way she could protect herself was to hit him in the head with a pan. She couldn't have a mace, she couldn't have a gun, and so she was at his mercy. When I first got elected, I took a cab to the Capitol. And on the way in, I said to the cab driver, I said, "Tell me about Washington, D.C." And he said, "Oh, it's a beautiful place." He said, "But there's an awful lot of crime." And I said, "Well, you know, back in Indiana, I used to carry a lot of money in my business, and I had a gun permit. Maybe I should get one here." And he said, "Oh, you can't get a gun permit in Washington, D.C. Nobody has guns here except the police and the crooks." And he reached under the front seat of his cab and pulled a .38 out and says, "But if you want one of these, I can get it for you in 15 minutes. Now, a person who wants to defend themselves and their family in this city, and they want to do it legally, they're at the mercy of these people that can get these guns in 15 minutes. And the record shows that this has been a murder leader and a crime leader across this country, because criminals know if they break into your house, you don't have any way to defend yourselves. And that's why the Supreme Court made the decision that it did, because people have a right to protect themselves. You know, I live across the river in Virginia. The crime rate over there in Alexandria is much, much lower than it is here, and it's because the people have the right to defend themselves and their property in their own homes. And if they want to, they can get a gun permit to carry a gun to protect themselves. That's the way it ought to be in Washington, D.C., and it isn't. And as a result, we've had members of Congress mugged. The former minority leader of the House was mugged and beaten half to death. 2 of my staff people have been mugged and beaten, one of them twice, and they took their money, and they had no way to defend themselves. None. Even in their homes. Now, we're not asking you to give gun permits to everybody that's walking around the streets, but they ought to at least have the right to have a gun in their home to protect themselves if somebody breaks in. And I want to end up by saying this. I think this is a beautiful capital. I enjoy being in Congress, but there's no way in hell I would live in this city. I live across the river where it's safe.